It looks like China is requesting peace. We discussed with you that the conditions set by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China for their General Secretary Xi at the recently concluded Fourth Plenum was either to step down or to fix relations with the United States. As a result, Xi announced that he would still go to South Korea and that there would supposedly be a wonderful meeting there with United States President Donald. And in addition, suddenly the Chinese representative at the negotiations stated that the United States would get as many rare earth metals as it wants. This is a sharp turn in Xi's policy and, as they say, in China's policy.
Breaking news from Fox News right now. President Trump is in Malaysia for the first part of his week-long visit to Asia. While his administration announces that they have just reached a successful framework for a deal with China, ahead of Trump's meeting with Chairman Xi this week,
Trump is in Kuala Lumpur and will soon move on to South Korea. Treasury Secretary Besant is traveling with him.
Mr. Secretary, do you think China is ready to make a trade agreement?
Kristen, I can say yes, that we have just concluded 2 days of negotiations and have laid the groundwork for the two leaders to discuss this on Thursday in Korea.
So that's optimism. President Trump threatened to impose an additional 100 tariffs on China on November 1st if Beijing continues its plan to impose restrictions on rare earth minerals. How do you know if China refuses to lift these restrictions? Mr. Secretary, can you confirm that President Trump will actually impose these 100 tariffs against China?
Well, Kristen, I think that's old news. President Trump gave me a big advantage in negotiations with the threat of 100 tariffs on November 1st. And I believe that we have reached a very significant agreement that will allow us to avoid this and discuss many other issues with the Chinese. I think we will be able to discuss their help in solving this terrible problem.
With fentanyl, China was sending Mexico and Canada the ingredients needed to produce drugs, in this case fentanyl, and in laboratories in those countries it was produced and brought into the United States of America. For several years, China claimed it couldn't do anything about it. But after this fourth plenum, it suddenly announced that it could and would. No more ingredients for making fentanyl. I apologize if I pronounce something incorrectly in Russian because the Russian name for China is a bit different from the English one, and it won't be sent to Mexico, Canada, or other countries close to the United States.
I think we can discuss significant purchases of soybeans and agricultural products for our American farmers. I think we can discuss a more balanced trade. And I won't get ahead of the two leaders, but I think they will also discuss a global peace plan. President Trump, who has been so successful both here in Asia and in the Middle East, and now he is looking at Ukraine and Russia.
So the prepared knowledge, the general principles of negotiations between Trump and Xi, where? And China will be buying agricultural products from the United States on a massive scale. And B, China will obviously increase its purchases of energy from the United States at the expense of Russian supplies. And probably China will open its doors for additional exports from the United States to balance our trade imbalance.
Mr. Secretary, you said several significant things. It seems you are saying that you do not expect a 100% tariff against China on November 1st, and it seems you are saying that China is ready to buy soybeans to reopen those markets.
I believe that we have a basis for the two leaders to have a very productive meeting for both sides. And I think it will be wonderful for the citizens of the United States, for American farmers, and for our country as a whole.
In addition, Trump and Xi will discuss what I called the Trump Doctrine in yesterday's video, which is the cessation of all armed conflicts on planet Earth. I talked about this doctrine in my video on Sunday. Any agreement will bring relief to international markets, even if it doesn't solve the fundamental problems related to production imbalances and access to modern computer chips. Trump restricted the export of rare earth elements needed for advanced technologies, to which Trump responded with a threat to impose additional and serious tariffs on Chinese products. The prospect of the conflict expanding, of course, threatened to weaken economic growth around the world. China's chief trade negotiator Li Chenggang told reporters that the parties had reached a preliminary consensus. We don't know exactly what that is yet. Trump expressed confidence that an agreement would be reached soon, saying that the Chinese want to make a deal, and we, in turn, also want to make a deal. Again, he always says this. The president doesn't want to make a deal under any conditions. That's what's important. The president is scheduled to meet with Xi Jinping on Thursday in South Korea, which will be the last stop of his trip to Asia. Trump confirmed his plans to visit China in the future and suggested that Xi Jinping might also visit Washington or Mar-a-Lago, for example, Trump's private club in Florida. At the summit, Thailand and Cambodia signed an expanded ceasefire agreement. During the ceremony, which was attended by Trump, his presence and threats of economic pressure pushed both sides to stop the clashes along the border. Well, they had a disputed border, and until the beginning of this year, so to speak, they kept shooting at each other all the time. Thailand will release Cambodian prisoners, and Cambodia will begin withdrawing heavy artillery as part of the first stage of the agreement. I think they were happy that someone started dealing with them because they couldn't handle it themselves. Regional observers will monitor the situation to prevent the resumption of hostilities. We did what many thought was impossible, said Trump. And the Prime Minister of Cambodia, Hun Manet, I probably almost pronounced his name correctly, said that this is a historic day, and the Prime Minister of Thailand, Anutin, and then I can't pronounce his last name, he stated that the agreement creates building blocks for a lasting peace. God bless them, God bless them. The president signed economic framework agreements with Cambodia, Thailand, and Malaysia, some of which are aimed at expanding trade in these very critical minerals. The United States, of course, wants to rely less on China, which has used export restrictions on key components as leverage as a means of pressure. The Prime Minister of Malaysia is Anwar Ibrahim. I can say this, I can pronounce this. Highly appreciated the agreement between Thailand and Cambodia. Everyone there breathed a sigh of relief, since God forbid the whole region could have been impacted. This reminds us that a ceasefire is not a concession, but an act of courage. Haha, I totally agree. Nice job, Anwar. So, establishing relations with Lula, that is the Brazilian president, with whom Trump had a minor clash, he started persecuting his political opponents. Well, just to persecute. So, at the same time, avoiding a meeting with the Prime Minister of Canada, that is Mark Carney, President Trump is a bit angry at Canada because of television ads protesting against his, well, sort of against his policies. And all these ads were made so that they would be seen in America, these ads. So on the way to the summit, he announced on social media that he would raise tariffs for Canada because of these ads. If I understood correctly, by 10. One of the leaders absent from this summit was the Prime Minister of India, that is Narendra Modi, even though he was close to Trump during his first term. Lately, their relationship has become a bit tense. That's how I would put it. Trump caused irritation by raising tariffs on Russian oil, which India buys and makes a lot of money from. I've already mentioned they buy it at a good discount, then process it, then pretend it's not Russian oil and resell it. And those who buy it pretend they don't know. So what has changed or what will change after this? If a trade peace agreement happens, China might decide to ditch Russia. If the plenum of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China decides that it's necessary to restore relations with America, and Trump demands, and he will demand, that they stop financing Russia, and he offers hydrocarbons. So, at prices that are acceptable to China, of course, they won't be as low as the prices China forced on Russia, because we're not desperate, right? But still at some reduced prices than the Celestial Empire might start. Thank you, I'll even say. Okay, most likely it will start replacing Russian oil and maybe even liquefied gas. American, first of all, and then, well, Saudi Arabia. If the United States is not against Iranian, and I think the United States won't be against it, if Iran also trades something for something, they'll agree. We have some things that we want Iran to agree to. Like not financing Hezbollah and the Houthis, like letting us check what happened with the explosions we caused there, to look at other places where they tried or are producing something bad. Of course, Iran is watching the World Games. If they see that everything is leaning toward Trump, they'll throw anyone under the bus because to them, we're all infidels. I mean, Russia. They'll throw us under the bus, and I think for them, it doesn't matter. We're all the same. So we'll all burn in hell. From their point of view, a promise given to an infidel not only can, but must be broken, because we are worse than pigs, and nothing can be worse than pigs except an infidel. So Europe will end its hydrocarbon contracts with Russia within a year and won't sign any new ones. And by the end of either 2027 or 2026, we'll see what happens. Let's see what they decide at their parliament, at that Congress of theirs, or whatever it's called, the European Parliament, I guess. So by the end of 2026 or 2027, everything will be completely shut down. Well, maybe except for Hungary and Slovakia, that's a separate story. Indian and Chinese, private Chinese oil refineries have already cut their purchases of Russian oil by 50% and are negotiating with the Arabs. Off the coast of Venezuela, as you know, there's an American, well, a reinforced squadron. The American fleet is stationed there, and it's clear to everyone that they're in control. The waters. The Panama Canal is closed to Russia. 670 ships from their shadow fleet have already been exposed, and no one in Europe will give them spare parts, port entry, or insurance, which is actually the scariest thing for oil tankers and oil transport vessels. The same applies to Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. They also deny entry, insurance, and permission. This all looks like a serious blow to Russia's finances. I'm by no means saying that Russia will fall apart tomorrow. But when 2 days ago, Putin's envoy Dmitriev arrived in the United States, and at the White House he was called a liar and a propagandist and was asked to leave the room. Not as loudly as with Zelensky, I'll say right away. Not as loudly as with Zelensky, it just all happened in front of the cameras, so it was simply impossible to ignore. I suspect that he smoked a little for courage. Zelensky, well, by the way, is also a liar and a propagandist, but they sent Dmitriev, I think, even farther than Zelensky. So guys, I mean, Russians, like, guys, we're spending time on you, we worked with you, what do you mean we didn't do something? It's time. That's exactly what was important to us. So, but you decided that your KGB games are the best way to behave, so please go play somewhere else. Another word from me, Trump, please, they didn't hear it. Well, now we're going to do what, so to speak, what we really didn't want to do, but we have to. We're starting to put pressure on you, and if we've started, we won't stop halfway. We have such a nasty character, you're upstarts, fools. All your earnings are based on what you do. So Mother Nature put resources in your land. You can't invent or create anything yourselves. You just pump out the subsoil and basically mess up the world. We're tired of you. That's what I mean, both from Trump and from myself. We're tired of you. Russia is like a festering pimple on the body of the planet. So you'll sit in the trenches and they won't be able to do anything for quite a while without showing themselves. In a year, Russia occupied less than 1% of Ukraine's territory, showing they can't advance. No matter what they say, thousands of Ukrainians are dying in the fields and cities. And continuing the war means more and more deaths and destruction. It's the right time for Zelensky. Well, or maybe someone else is in charge there. I honestly don't know. I don't follow the local politics over there. So, to come to the White House and say, "We're ready for peace, guys. We're ready for peace. Let's look for ways together to stop this bloodshed instead of setting conditions." Those are different things. Setting conditions and saying, "Guys, let's look for ways together to end the war." If China abandons Russia, that's probably the best moment to start negotiations, because that could be the whip, the hammer raised over the head that we've all been waiting for. And what the carrot will be, that's an interesting question. I don't know. But it's necessary to take advantage of this moment when the Russian leadership will be confused and basically will be afraid of what is called a palace coup. Yes, that's basically all. Goodbye and see you next time.